Hello, everyone, and welcome to Burn the Ship, the podcast that helps entrepreneurs go all in on their business, and we introduce them to professionals that can help them to do so. Today, we have a very special guest. Greg, how are you doing today?
Great. Thanks for having me, Roderick. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Looking so forward to it. Go ahead and introduce yourself in the name of your business.
Yes, I'm Greg Stevens. My company is Alignment Resources, and we help people have the most difficult conversations they'll ever have.
Awesome. We are looking forward to learning more about that. But before we get there, we want to learn a little bit more about your journey, and we understand that time is one of our most valuable resources. So let's go ahead and jump into things. Tell us about your story.
Well, a little about my story started when I was in high school. I actually ended up getting to work with the Dallas Mavericks in their expansion year in a talented gifted program where I did an unpaid internship, but that gave me a taste for business. And then I was out on my own at 17 years old, a week after I graduated from high school, completely on my own financially. Decided to go to Baylor University, put myself through in 4 years, and then did several jobs after that. I even sold cemetery property door to door in the Houston-Humble area to pay for a year of college. And my final year, it was either that or don't go to college. So I finished up after 4 years, and then got into a couple of different sales programs, and then eventually worked for a pharmaceutical company, did pharmaceutical sales for nearly 13 years, and then ended up going out on my own, and I started teaching man-woman relationship courses, and then communication courses, and then up to where I do the work I do today. So it's been quite a journey, a lot of different things along the way. Great lessons, but also many difficult ones as well.
I know. Now, based off what you shared, I want to dive back into one of those jobs you had. So you said door-to-door plots?
Cemetery plots,
Tell me a little bit, or give me an idea of how you overcame talking about something that we don't want to talk about anyway, and then you just did it door-to-door. So give us a story on one of those situations.
Well, it was a different world back then. I don't know that you could do it today, but back then they taught me a little about the product, probably about 8 hours of training, showed me a couple of videos, and then sent me out, and I'd go around in the morning and say, do a little survey. You folks don't own cemetery property, do you? I'm from the funeral home down the way, and I just write information down, and I'd say, when are you both, you and your husband, back at home in the evenings? And they'd say usually 5:36, whatever. And then I'd get dressed up in the evening, and then I'd go back and knock on the door, and they'd come to the door. I'd say, "Hi, I'm Greg Stevens. Can I come in?" And I'd just start walking in.
Okay.
And it was intimidating to me at first, but people kind of followed you. They'd sit down on the couch, and then I'd get up and I'd say, "Can we go over to your," after about 5 minutes of getting to know them, I'd say, "Can we go over here to your kitchen table?" And because most of the family decisions are made at the kitchen table. So I'd pull out my binder, start talking through it. And about 5 minutes into it, they go, "Oh, you're from the funeral home. We thought you were from our church or something."
Oh, goodness gracious.
Idea who I was.
And they didn't invited you in, so you're already letting the people know, hey, look, you're good at getting introductions and getting in there. That's a crash course when it comes to sales there.
It was. And it was interesting because what I was selling was something that's going to happen. And I wasn't, and it's hard to talk about for most people. And I typically found the women wanted to buy and the men were ready to put me out the door. But the women wanted to buy because typically women outlive men.
That's right.
And that's a decision they didn't want to make on their own at that terrible time. And so it was an opportunity, and that's what I saw it as, not as a hard sell, but it was the hard part for me was walking in that door at the beginning. And I've always learned I want my resistance up front, because you're going to get resistance in any situation. I like it better up front than on the back end.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And that's awesome that was the opportunity you took to get yourself through college. So you said you did that, got yourself through college, you got in pharmaceutical sales. Tell us a little bit about that and how that experience was for those 13 years.
Yeah, it was interesting because I got a job in Austin and I was up against 210 people who were interviewing for one position. And there were people who were pharmacists, there were people who had more sales experience, but the cemetery property helped me out quite a bit. And they were worried that I couldn't learn the science. And it was so interesting because the manager I was interviewing with, he said, "We've got more than 200 people looking for this. What's going to set you apart?" And I thought they're worried about the science, so take their worry away. So I went to the library, this is before the internet, and I sat down, I took their number one drug, and I looked at the physiology of what someone might have and what their drug did, comparing it to others. And I wrote a 5 to 10 page paper about it, walking someone through the science of it because they were concerned with that. But I put it in layman's terms, and I gave that to them. And it was so interesting because I found out later that that had eventually gotten up to the president of the company, that showing how much someone wanted a job when we were worried about this from
Hmm.
them.
Hmm.
So many people want, oh, how do I prove that I can learn the science? Well, I need to figure something out to do that. So often we don't think outside the box. They'd never had anyone do that, but I thought, I want the job. I'm going to do what I need to get the job.
Yeah, that is awesome right there. That is a great illustration of showing how to go above and beyond. That's something that I wouldn't have thought about doing, but it makes a ton of sense. And I definitely appreciate you dropping that nugget on us. So you were 13 years in the pharmaceutical industry. What was next for you there?
Well, it was interesting because in the pharmaceutical business, they would pay for me to take any type of classes I wanted. So I wanted to be the best salesperson I could be. So I took classes in human development, human behavior, psychology, sociology, uh, all of the traditional and non traditional. For 12 of those 13 years, I was constantly taking classes in leadership. And it led eventually to me running into a person that was teaching a course on man woman relationships.
Hmm. Hmm.
Well, the gentleman who was teaching it was a life coach, and I hired him to be my life coach. And he said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to get out of pharmaceuticals. I want to pursue my passion of acting." And before you know it, I had an acting coach. My coach said, "Move out to LA." I had an agent. I had really quickly everything moved because I was ready to do it.
Hmm.
And uh, after a little while, I'd done some plays, I'd done some things on ads and things like that. And my coach said, "Well, how do you feel about it?" I said, "This just doesn't call to me. I love being in front of people doing this, but I don't feel like I'm making a difference." And he asked, "Have you ever done what I do?" And I thought about doing what I do. I thought, I've never even considered it.
Hmm.
I said, "What would I need to do?" He said, "Well, you can go online. This is when online classes were new, and get a certification in this." But he said, "I believe in doing a true apprenticeship." So I worked with him doing a true apprenticeship, giving between 1,000 to 2,000 hours worth of free coaching,
Hmm.
setting up classes, coaching on the side, hiring him still to work with me. And after about 2.5 years, I decided to go out on my own with no safety net. Didn't know anyone in the industry. And I started teaching man woman relationship classes. That eventually led to, I found a group of gentlemen who talked about, they wrote these books: Crucial Conversations, Crucial Accountability, and Crucial Influence. And I met these guys before they had the books,
Hmm.
and took their classes and asked if I could train their material, and I sell it for them. So they allowed me to keep my independent status, do that. And I became one of their master trainers for 24 years.
Oh,
Still kept
nice.
my independent status,
Hmm.
and then I eventually, based on all the work I did, I actually wrote my book called "Build New Bridges: The Art of Restoring Impossible Relationships," and I released that in January. It's all about the application of what I teach. What I found most of the time, people will go to a class and they learn something. They love it. They just don't know how to apply it. And that's what I work in. I help people apply it. I help them clean up, improve, and actually complete relationships in their lives.
That is magnificent that you were able to take that apprenticeship, take all of those hours, because they say it takes a certain amount of hours to be a professional at something. And you worked with that gentleman for about 2.5 years, you said.
Yeah.
Was it a specific thing that ignited that fire under you to burn the ship and go all in on your business?
Yeah. Well, I want to go back a little because I learned to burn the ship really early. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to go back to when I was about to go to college.
Okay.
I went decided to go to Baylor University, very expensive. My parents had moved down to East Texas, and East Texas Baptist was close to them. And my dad was a Baptist minister, so he said it's even half the price here. So, and my mom looked at me. She said, East Texas Baptist is a reality. Baylor's a dream.
Mm-hmm.
And she meant it for me to say, okay, let's go with reality. And that moment I thought, no, what's life if I can't live out some dreams? And that was the moment I made a decision. And once you make a decision, everything else is just detail because I know where I'm going. And it was like, it doesn't matter the time, how difficult, I'm going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
When the decision is made, the bridge is burned. And I love you've got the ship is burned. You've got to burn it. You can't go back. You can't keep going back.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned early on to do that. And then I had the golden handcuffs on. When I worked for a pharmaceutical company, I had a company car, I had expense account, I knew my doctors. I could work my territory in a minimal amount of time and take doctors to play golf or do other things with my time that were fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I made a lot of money, but it wasn't fulfilling for me. And in that moment I thought, you know what? I've got to let this go. And it was hard because I grew up with no money and then I had it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was hard to let that go. And as I did, I nearly got to a point where my business didn't take off like I thought it would.
Mm-hmm.
And there came a point when it's like, are you going to go back and go to sales? Again, in that moment, it was like, no, I can't do that. And as moment you do that, the universe comes in and the right things come in, but you're going to be challenged on anything that's really significant. Some people I've known have fallen into money or it's really come easy, but there is a time they'll say, money didn't do it for me. There's
Mm-hmm.
always a time when you have to come back and say, what is my purpose? What is my mission here? Because I believe it's more than that success that we see with money. It has to be a deeper thing, or that money just kind of goes by the wayside.
Yeah, that self-fulfilling aspect of life becomes a part of life as you matriculate through it. You know, as we are younger, maybe there's a certain thing that motivates us. After working with all the people and having the apprenticeship, I see that it changed from just, hey, let me get the dollars to how can I feel self-fulfilled while helping others. So that seems like that's the path that it came out for you.
Yes, it did. And it's interesting because I get calls every week of people saying, "Hey, this changed my life," or I've had a conversation with someone I haven't talked to in 2 or 3 years. When I get those, most people don't get those types of things in their job, and it's so fulfilling to be able to hear that every single week because I've been doing it a long time. And that's just it. Many times when you're first starting out, you don't hear those stories. You're planting seeds. Just realize it typically doesn't come in the time frame we think,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe even in the form we think of. And it usually ends up being better and more sustainable if we do it that way.
Yeah, you've been giving us some small trailers, a little bit of tidbits on what it is that you're doing. Do you mind going ahead and share with us your business and how you're helping others and just give us a full rundown on Greg and what he does inside of his business?
Thank you, Roderick. Yeah, I actually have talked about applying the skills that people learn in difficult conversations. Many people taking classes, they don't know how to apply it. So we work specifically with executives or those just under the executive role trying to become an executive, and we teach them how to have those conversations. And I run what's called a master team. It's a hybrid. It's part mastermind, part master class, part group coaching, and individual coaching when people need it. So let's say an executive comes into my program. We meet once a week, they do all of those, but they have the opportunity to call me if they're talking with their board about a difficult conversation, or they're talking with their team. I sit down and we map out how they're going to approach it, what may show up. And that's kind of my superpower, is understanding where these conversations go. I'm a professional mediator as well. So I've gotten sit through a lot of these, both family and professionally. I have a thing where we actually go in and do team mediations, where we get an executive team all together and we let them talk through the issues and put the past in the past. Again, burn that ship, get it out of there. Let's go forward. But people typically will say, you need to go have this conversation, but no one's really taught us how, and then how to apply it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we do in our program for executives. So we put executives with the executives, and we put leaders just under with those leaders, because they have different things they talk about. We've also just opened up a new market for, one of the things I found was, I had a CFO tell me, where were you 24 years ago when I took the CFO position?
Mm-hmm.
He said, more than 50% of the problems I had would have been handled had I understood what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, you know what? Let's go and reach the younger generation. So we're actually going to parents now and marketing for people who have kids in seniors in college,
Mm-hmm.
in a gap year, or their first 2 to 3 years in their career, to give them a boost, teaching them the skill sets that most executives have difficulty with. And we felt like setting up the next generation of leaders to be able to speak their truth respectfully, to steer the ship where it needs to go, and then to let the past go behind them and to go forward would be where our time would be best served.
Yes, yes. Now, that is very important because the youth and it's a different style of learning.
Yes.
I've learned that, over time, myself being mature in business and having to usher in this newer generation. It's important to learn from them, but also share with them some of the successful things that you have had over your life, the experiences you've had in your life. As we are painting the picture and just trying to make that canvas beautiful, let's dive a little bit more into that part of your program since it's new. Tell us a little bit more what that, ideal person looks like, and or how we can best find someone to fit inside of that program.
Yeah, and it's great because you're right, Roderick. It's a different mindset, especially today. And I've been teaching younger people these skills for years, and I love the energy that young people bring. They're not set in their ways. They don't have to portray. A lot of executives have to portray a certain level of, there's a shell I typically have to break through that I don't have to break through with the younger. But on the older group, the executives, we find people who are already successful that want to, I call it, upgrade your communication skills.
Mm-hmm.
But for the younger groups that we work with, we need people who are really top of their game. Not everyone gets in. And we have a rigorous process. They have to be a natural giver. A lot of people tend to come in. We ask questions to find out if they're a real giver or if they're just a taker. We need a givers, because real leaders, will find you don't do it alone.
Mm-hmm.
And we need a support group. And that's what's beautiful about this. But we want people who are actually wanting to do the work, it's those high achievers in those areas, but really want to nitro boost their career, but they're open to learning. They're open to trying something new, because what we do can be awkward sometimes. And I let people know that up front. But it's interesting, just like driving, it's awkward when you first drive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But as you do it over and over and over, all of a sudden you can negotiate things you never thought you could at the beginning. And that's what our learning process does. And it's a 20-week program done over 6 months, because I found so many people want it quick. They don't want to do the work. They want it quick. You don't make a great lasagna in 15 minutes. You've got to set it up, put it together. You've got to bake it for a certain amount of time. There are certain things, and I don't know anyone else who's done it, can do it in 20 weeks like I do, because the reason I've learned this was I went back when I started doing all this work, Roderick, and I cleaned up all my past relationships myself.
Okay.
So I have a list of 36 people, and it took me 2.5 years to clean those up. And so write about that in the book, but I learned this process of how to apply what I've learned and what it takes, because we don't throw people in the deep end early. We actually build them up. And what it's great, parents start having conversations with their kids they've never had,
Mm-hmm.
because one of the exercises is go to your family member or to your boss and talk about what respect looks like to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Find out what they how they define respect, because everyone defines it differently.
Mm-hmm.
But that's an awkward conversation because we've never done it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But when they do it over and over, they start to see how important it is, and how important it is to set up agreements at work with your family members, how things change. We live by assumption, and we live by assumption, not agreement. It's when you try to hold someone accountable, it's like you're standing on quicksand.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But when you make an agreement, you're standing on solid ground. So those are the program. That's what we do with the program. So we're looking for those people, like I said, seniors in college who are doing great things.
Mm-hmm.
They're typically not just studying their books. They're actually out trying to do extra things. They're doing service roles. They're looking for things that sometimes they've had jobs, they've been working hard. Their parents are helping them, but they're paying for some of it as well.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of different parameters that we look, but we want to find those leaders, those young leaders who are givers, who understand a level of consciousness, and we help their self-awareness as they go through the program.
Definitely appreciate you sharing about your executive program as well as your, I guess they're young professionals,
Yeah.
and how to get them prepared for what's coming in the future. So thanks for sharing on that. But what I want to talk about next is your book, and try to figure out, how did that come about? What inspired you to say, I'm going to take this knowledge, these experiences that I've had over time, and put them on paper? Tell us a little bit about how that came about.
Yeah, it's funny. I'll be honest. I talked about my book for years, and I wrote on it little by little. And I think when something comes to you, a book comes out of you. It doesn't. It's not something you do. And I actually sat on it too long. It's kind of like birthing.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to stay. You don't want to stay trying to birth a baby too long. It's very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And so I held on to it too long because I loved what I was doing. But it takes time to focus on a book many times if you really want to write it. Now they have groups that talk to you and things like that. But I did the old school way. I sat down and wrote this thing the old school way, and it came out of me through my experiences. It came out of me through my coaching. It came out of me with what I saw I struggled with. That's one of the things you'll find in the book. I tell people all the time, I'm a practitioner of this. It doesn't mean I'm perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And if you see me out there in the world, I give this to anyone who knows me or sees me. If you see me not living what I'm teaching, you have my permission to come tell me, hey, that doesn't line up with what you're teaching. I want to be that type of a person out in the world that practices what I do. So I want to put that out there for anyone who ever meets me. But I go out and I mess it up.
Mm-hmm.
I come back and I do it again.
Mm-hmm.
I come back, I mess it up. I do it again. That's what success is, I think, is continuing to get up. You're never a failure unless you stop getting up.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense, because if you stop, that's when you stop.
Yeah, and that's just it. None of my businesses have shown up the way I wanted them to,
Mm-hmm.
or in the time frame. But it's getting back up. It's having that conversation, and that's what the book's about. It walks through a little about my story, my life. It's also a communication book for business, for personal, and it's got all kinds of real life situations about my life or other people I've coached along the way.
Yeah, tell us the name of the book again, and
Yeah.
where would be the best place to find it.
Yeah, it's called Build New Bridges: The Art of Restoring Impossible Relationships. And everyone's probably got at least one they think is impossible.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I love about it, because I've had so many people call me and say, Greg, I had this conversation I never thought I would have. Does it always work out that way? Absolutely not. But if you learn this, you have a different way of looking at things, and it may help you with that. So you can find it on Amazon. You can. I even have the Audible. I don't do the Audible. I got a professional because I'm terrible at reading. I can speak anywhere, but you don't want to hear me read. You die of boredom.
I got you. I got you. Now,
But the person I got did a great job. So Amazon's probably the easiest to
easiest place.
order on.
Yeah, because what you shared so far has been magnificent, and how you are going about doing something that's vital, not just in business, but in life, and that's communicating properly. So we definitely appreciate you sharing that with us. And as you have given us tidbits throughout, this particular conversation of how to be successful, we want to dive in it specifically so you can tell us some of those business skills that you have acquired and nurtured over time that has helped Greg to be successful. Can you highlight one of those for the audience so they can try to add that to their mix?
Yeah, I'd say it comes back to personal responsibility. I have a quote that I love to say. It's kind of the foundation of what I do. It's everything in my life I create, promote, or allow. Total responsibility. And one of the things I find is to be totally responsible, you have to learn new things, be a continuous learner. That's what I'm constantly doing. Even though I have a communication book, I've been training communication for years. I still take communication courses. I can learn something. I listen to coaches. Be open. One of the things I found, sometimes when we get older, we think, I should know this, I should know this. Humble yourself. Okay. I've got a person I'm mentoring now. He's taught me more than probably anyone in my life, and he's 24.
Okay.
It just being around him, his energy. And so be open to learning, learn new skills. There's always something out there with what we have with AI. People are scared of AI. No need to be. Collaborate with it, learn from it, and actually add that into what you're trying to do in the world. So assimilate, but connect with people. Roderick, I think all of this, when I look at everything in my life I create, promote, or allow, that means my relationships as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And where are your relationships? Are they abundant? Are they broken? Are there things people you want to avoid? That takes your power away. And I'd encourage you, dive in, show your internal light to people. This is who I am, and say it respectfully to people.
Yes, that is awesome. Great tidbit there. It's one of those things where what you shared so far can only enhance the relationships, and definitely looking forward to learning more from you, as well as going to go ahead and get that book so I can kind of get an up on my relationships. I'm sure I got some back there I need to kind of fix. Now, we've talked a lot about your journey, your ups, downs, all arounds in business, but now we want to talk about Greg. So, Greg, let's just say that you have gotten that young professional program off. You are helping everyone. The executive is coming good, and we made that book just a #1 seller on every chart. And time and money is not an issue for Greg. What is it that Greg would do with his time?
Well, one thing I've always wanted to do, and I'd need to get my wife to not be seasick. I'd like to go live on a sailboat for a
Okay.
year with someone else sailing for us, but
Mm-hmm.
me helping out. And but I'd also like to have a link where I can actually do, because what I do in life, there's nothing more fulfilling for me. And it would be fun to be able to get on each week or with clients to talk with them from a sailboat somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
and and just travel and enjoy. It doesn't have to be on the sailboat the whole time, but it would be travel. But Roderick, that's one of the things that my wife, I told her when we first met, I said, I never want to retire because I like what I do so much. I think it would be a missing. It's not a have to, it's a passion of mine.
Mm-hmm.
But the fun thing would be traveling. I love to see other countries. I love to go different places in the world. It's one thing I'm doing also to try to do that is I'm putting together a relationship program for men and women to actually go somewhere in the world, a different resort every 3 months.
Okay.
It'll be different group, but we're going to talk about man-woman relationships where I started,
Mm-hmm.
but we're going to have a fun time doing it. That's on my next book I'm working on a relationship book now with masculine and feminine, the male-female dynamic.
Now, Greg, have you come up with a name of the boat, and do you know what kind of boat it is, like specifically? Do you know all that already?
Well, yeah, it'd be a 60 footer with my wife and I, and then a captain, but
Hmm.
maybe a couple people. But it would be, I'd call it my wife's name, Emily.
Okay, nice,
Yeah,
nice,
yeah,
nice. I always ask those types of questions because I'm trying to help manifest it for you,
absolutely.
So if we speak it, it does have the opportunity to come true. So I was just poking, just trying to see, just trying to
I
see.
love that.
Now, if the people that are watching today have additional questions about how to get into your programs, learn and talk a little bit more with you about those business skills, Greg, what's the best way for people to get in contact with you?
Yeah, you can always go to our website. It's alignment-resources.com. Don't forget the dash. I've got a podcast called A Shot of Inspiration. I'll talk about that on there as well. Um, but also you can contact me or Noah, the person who works closely with me, my person that I've been mentoring, and it's Greg at alignment-resources.com or Noah at alignment-resources.com. And I'm on LinkedIn. You can look me up. And but Roderick, I want to say your show is awesome. I watched it the other day, and I was like, "You're such a good interviewer," and I appreciate the connection because I'm still not a good podcast host.
It's okay. It's okay. Well, you just got to get out there and, any tip that I could give you, it is active listening. It's one of those things where, we're all trying to figure out how not to sound crazy and not fumble and those types of things. But if you truly and genuinely are listening and interested in it, it'll make you actively listen, and therefore you'll have it, man. I'm telling you, that's the only advice I can really give as you're growing that podcast portion.
Thank you. And I will be pushing yours as well. And I'll put it out there right now. I'd love to have you as a guest on mine.
Awesome, awesome. We'll definitely set that up. And, we truly appreciate you coming on as a guest. And to honor you for coming on, we always ask for you to give the last word. So, Greg, please take a few minutes, look into the camera, and tell the people something good.
I'm going to say one thing that goes along with burn the ship. Don't trip on something behind you. Everything in your life you create, promote, or allow. Be responsible and live the best life you can live.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Greg.
Thanks, Roderick, for having me. Bye-bye, everyone.
And to everyone that is watching, be kind and thanks.